Did you see the latest royal news? 7-month-old Prince of England, Louis, is shown affectionately messing with the hair of 70-year-old Prince Charles. Princes generally get good press, but kings rarely do. To say he behaves like a prince, that's a nice compliment. But to say he's acting like a king carries this kind of tyrannical overtone to it. In today's gospel, Pilate asks Jesus, "Are you the King of the Jews?" Jesus answers, "Do you ask this on your own, or did others tell you about me? Who is accusing me of being a king after all?" Jesus does not want anyone jumping to royal conclusions about him. Why is that? Because the Roman emperors and the Herodian kings of biblical times were terribly ruthless rulers. They had more or less stripped royalty from any spiritual, magical, or affectionate facades. As a church, we are preparing to welcome our baby prince on Christmas Day. But first, we enter a season. We enter a season that challenges us to a diversity of fears and expectations. The season of Advent. Advent. 'Tis the dark night season before the bright light season. As you well know, in the weeks ahead, we will see everything from the most ridiculously trivial to the most splendidly sublime lighting up all around us. Today's media uses a great term, bandwidth. It's often used in regards to your internet service at home, where it is very complicated. In that context, bandwidth is the rate of data transfer, the bit rate, the throughput, and it is measured in bits per second. However, I find the image of a hose, like a long hose, and the amount of water that can flow through the hose, that's maybe a simpler explanation of what bandwidth is. Basically, bandwidth is how much information, or in that case, water, can flow from here to there in some amount of given time. Bandwidth is not merely a technical or mathematical issue. It also has implications when it comes to incarnation, the Word becoming flesh. Think about the miracle of childbirth. Two very different complex organisms come together to create one totally unique new human person. In terms of genetic information, it's like two giant fire hoses filled with bits of information, forming one new, unique being with all the information it needs to live a human life for decades in a precarious world. Now listen to the gospel in terms of this incarnational information interface. Pilate says, "So you are a king?" Jesus answers, "You say that I am a king? For this I was born, and for this I came into the world, to testify to the truth. Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Pilate answered, "What is truth?" You'll notice that last line, "What is truth?" is left out of today's gospel portion. Some scholars, somewhere along the line, left out the punchline. Who has time to get into a question like, what is truth? Anyway, so let's make some time. Let's make some time for truth. The truth is, God has a very wide bandwidth. God's bandwidth is so wide that the divine incarnation story of the precarious birth of Jesus includes very different kings. There is the terrorist king who murders the innocents, and there are the three kings from the east who offer gifts worthy of a new baby prince. My maternal grandmother was a huge Anglophile and an ardent subject of the English monarchy. She always had a story to tell about the royal family. Those stories were often told at the dinner table, where her colorful royal tales came together with roast beef and Yorkshire pudding. It's very true that sometimes when story and food come together in a special way, we are in a sacramental and sacred presence. Some years ago, when I was in Abilene, I was asked to come up with an event that could be auctioned off to raise funds for our parish elementary school. I had noticed that children are often fascinated by the architecture, the music, the beauty, the parades, the things, the pageantry, and the foods of our Anglican tradition. So I proposed an elaborate high tea with the rector as an auction item. It was sure to be a unique experience. I could offer young Texas cowboys and cowgirls. We laid out our finest silver, most delicate teacups, baked fancy cookies from scratch with real butter, and we took a picture of each child sitting in the bishop's great throne. To my delight and relief, the event attracted a great response. Most of the children that came were little girls. They often dressed in princess dresses, and they wore every piece of jewelry that their body could bear. They were earnest in proper etiquette and the finest details of a good tea party. There was lots of curtsying and lots of bowing, and of course, the artful hold of the teacup. The pinky has to be extended at maximum distance. The grand finale was a climb to the top of the bell tower for the heavenly high view, a God's eye view of the earth. Now it happens that today is the grand finale of our church liturgical year. This is the end of the year. This is the last Sunday before a new Advent season. In the high church tradition, it is known as the Feast of Christ the King. Looking over the lessons we have heard over this past year, we see the huge bandwidth of God's information for us, pouring out like a fire hose of different stories, actions, and experiences. I'm going to make the last word for this last day of the church year this. What is truth? Truth, then, becomes an eternal mystery to enter rather than a quick question to answer. Truth requires us to climb up the ancient tower stairs of spiritual searching, and from there to look at earthly reality from a heavenly viewpoint. Remember that the bright blue of the daytime sky, that bright blue blocks out from our sight most of God's cosmos. It is in the long, dark nights of Advent that the eyes of our souls might see the great star rising in the distance to carefully and graciously guide us onward. Imagine what it might be like to see the whole universe in its beauty, depth, and glory. Imagine the amount of ungraspable information that flows into your eyes Your brain doesn't have the bandwidth for it all, but when you sit there and stare into that dark night sky, your soul has the bandwidth to receive that, to be enlightened by its beauty. Even though the brain falls short, imagine how totally unrealistic it all is, but no more unrealistic than that some explosion billions of years ago could, all by itself, accidentally and incidentally, give you and me and billions of other souls the imagination to ponder all this. Imagine the Creator of infinite reality forming a little baby that you could take into your arms and hold close to your heart and love from the depth of who you are. Imagine a young princess named Mary embracing her newborn Prince of Peace. Jesus tells us, "Everyone who belongs to the truth listens to my voice." Do you desire truth? Listen, and you will hear your heart's desire. Listen this Advent, and you may hear the voice of God coming forth from the tenderest and tiniest and sweetest of souls, your own. Amen.